You're listening to LibraryCast, your library podcast with me, Jeremy Thompson-Smith, Somerset Library's outreach officer for the Mendips, bringing to you Libraries from Home. On this week's LibraryCast, we welcome Somerset Folk musician Dora Darling, who will be playing some music from her brand new album, The Quest. And your songs seem to tell stories, and that's what we do in libraries. Tell us about some of the stories on your new record.
Well, I've been fascinated with stories since I was a small child. I really love stories and I love fairy tales. And I grew up listening to folk music and reading masses and masses of fairy tales because my mother sold antiquarian children's books. And I lived in a house with 5,000 children's books in it. And so I've had a sort of lifelong fascination with story and books. I am a big fan of libraries. And the stories, I suppose that some of the stories on this CD, for example, Caliburn is based on a book that I read called, I think it's called Here Lies Arthur by someone called Philip Reeve. And I think it's actually a children's book, but I've read it quite a few times, only as an adult. And it's a different take on the King Arthur story. And the take on the King Arthur story is that the Lady of the Lake is actually a young girl who's noticed by Merlin, who can hold her breath for a really long time. And he gets her to dive into the lake and to hold up the sword for King Arthur to take from her hand. And actually, you know, she's just a child who's a good swimmer. Yeah, and I don't know, the song is quite sort of magical and mystical sounding. One of the other songs on there, which is called Sword Song, was also inspired by a children's book by Rosemary Sutcliffe.
Sometimes it's lovely to hear the words of a song without music. And the song that I'm referring to is The Unicorn. Tell us a little bit about that song, and I'd love it if you could recount a couple of lines from that.
The story of the song is quite bizarre, really. But the first verse of the song is, in the middle of the night, the unicorn came and she followed him out in the wind and the rain. And what actually happened was that I saw a unicorn and I didn't follow it. And I wish that I had. Yeah, I saw this bright, shining unicorn and I didn't follow it. And so the song is what may have happened had I followed the unicorn. I think I just really love a good story, and I especially love stories that feel ancient and kind of connect me to my ancestors. And I really, really enjoy the telling of stories, and I like old language. I want my songs to sound old. I don't enjoy I can enjoy modern music, but I don't particularly want to kind of incorporate modern language into what I'm writing myself. And I also never really enjoyed writing in the first person. So I think my songs express a lot of my inner world and my thoughts and feelings, but they express them as if it was through somebody else. And I'm telling this story about, the person following the unicorn, for example. But really, in my mind, it's me, but I'm expressing it as if I was telling the tale about somebody else.
Could you maybe recite some poetry?
"'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the barrow-groves, and the mum-rats outgrave. As in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame went bimbling through the tulgey wood and burbled as it came. 1, 2, and through, his vorpal sword went snicker-snack, and with its head he left it dead and went galumping back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, thou beamish boy. O frabjous day, callooh, calais, he chortled in his joy. Was brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the barrow-groves, and the mum-rats outgrave."
So, your name, professional name or your real birth name?
My real name is Dora, and that's the name that my mother gave me when I was born. And she said she named me Dora because she loved Dora from David Copperfield. And I was never that impressed by that, because Dora and David Copperfield burnt the mutton and died of consumption. But it's an ancient name, and it means gift. And Darling is my family name, so yeah, my name.
And I can hear you love books. Reading anything in particular at the moment that you can recommend to us?
Actually, I am. I'm reading a book called The King Must Die by Mary Renault. It's an old book, and it's a story about Theseus and his life and his times, and I just love it. It's fantastic. I've read it before. It's a great book.
So thank you so much for joining us on LibraryCast. I get the impression that you would love to be transported to another age, another time. If that's the case, what era would you like to be transported back to?
I definitely would choose about 25,000 years ago, and I'd be a hunter-gatherer, and I'd probably get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger quite quickly. But I just really, I'm not keen on technology, and I just really love the idea of just being with a family and eating things from the land, and yeah, that kind of thing. Or I'd probably like to have been around maybe the Middle Ages, that kind of time, and it probably wouldn't have lasted long then either. I'd probably been burnt as a witch.
We had a conversation about a week or so ago where you were telling me about your children and what can we do with them in home? They're getting bored, or whatever. What have you been doing with them?
We've been gardening, actually. I've got a very small garden, and somehow it seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's just such a delight. But we've been out in our garden, and we've been building dens. We've made a sort of teepee out of bean poles and sheets, which is something I used to do as a child a lot. So they've been outside. Today's the first day that it's rained in a month. And yeah, what else have we been doing? Reading, really. My daughters, we've actually got a big pile of books from the library before it closed. So we've been reading a lot. That's what we do. That's our go-to, is reading. Yeah.
And what are you reading? What are they reading at the moment? What stories are they reading? Recommend to us.
We've just read 2 books by Robert Nye, who is I think probably a bit dated for some people, but he writes the most fantastic stories that are really like traditional fairy tales. We read The Bird of the Golden Land, and then we've just read Wishing Gold. Fantastic books. Beautiful illustrations as well.
Heard the tale of his love for she, as she walked upon the sand. The shuttle spins under her fine hand. Come home to me, my man of the sea, home to my heart, for we must part. Bring home my lover to me. As she wandered that lonely shore, as he walked some far distant moor, sun and moon passed by overhead. She wove her songs on her silver thread. Roam and be free, my man of the sea. Travel the land as I sing on the sand, weaving my love for thee. singing voices upon the wind carried the news of her love to him. Hold fast for me, my maid by the sea, weaving our love upon a silver thread. Oh, how my arms ache for thee. One fine day as he walked the sand, the last silver thread was from her hand, and there she stood in such fine array, glowing bright as a summer's day. She saw how the sea parted free. She sang on the sand as she held his strong hand, forever eternally free. She sang on the sand as she held his strong hand, forever eternally free.
Dora Darling's new album is called The Quest, and you can find out more by going to her webpage by typing in Dora Darling Folk. I asked Dora to tell us about the song that we've just heard called The Endless Sea.
The Endless Sea is a story about lovers who don't actually really need to sort of be around each other to still love each other. And it also has a whole thread going on throughout the song that she's weaving. And I think that when I wrote that song, or she's spinning and she's weaving, when I wrote that song, I was living on a sheep farm and I was doing loads and loads of hand spinning with a drop spindle. And so the spinning has made its way into that song, and it's about somebody spinning and weaving a beautiful costume while she thinks of her lover who's far away.
You've been listening to LibraryCast, your Somerset Libraries podcast, bringing to you libraries from home.